Hey guys, it's Miss Reed from Citizenship Academy in Syracuse. Today you are going to do Personal Narratives, Unit 1, Lesson 7, Part 2. If you remember, I said yesterday that I took Lesson 7 and I broke it into 2 parts just so it would be more manageable for you. I thought it was a lot of work to do in one day. So today what you will do is use transition words to plan a chronological narrative. Talked about chronological yesterday. We'll review it again in a second. And you're going to mark events on a timeline in chronological order. All right, so yesterday we talked briefly about chronological order. Remember that chronological order means it happens in time order from first to last. There's an example over here of the timeline of Rosa Parks' life. So obviously her birth is on here first and her death is on here last. So the events of her life in time order, there's a lot of important things that happen in between, but they all come in order in which they happen in time. All right, so yesterday we read the diagnosis part 1 and part 2, but I wanted to review real quick about polio. So this story that we've been reading obviously takes place in the 1940s when polio was a problem in the United States. Nowadays, you don't get polio in our country because we have a vaccine against it that we get when we're little. But before they had the vaccine for it, people could catch it, and it was like a virus basically. But what happened was that it made you have a fever. It made all different kinds of things happen, but it could make you lose feeling in your legs and whatnot and make you unable to walk. So that's what it means in the story when it says that she was paralyzed. So this actually is pretty relative to our world right now, right? Because we have a sickness that's going around and we don't have a vaccine for it yet. And we have to be careful about being around other people and getting them sick. And in the story yesterday you read, Peg actually had to stay away from her parents and be isolated, which is basically what people have to do when they're in quarantine so they don't make other people sick. So this is actually pretty relatable to our lives now. Last year, it was kind of harder for my kids to understand because we did this in September and we hadn't had the coronavirus outbreak yet. And they couldn't really understand like a disease going around and us not having a vaccine and people getting sick all the time. But this is basically what happened to the narrator Peg in this story. So it's actually kind of, I don't want to say cool because it's not cool that she got sick and it's not cool that people are getting sick, but it's actually kind of interesting now that we can read it and with this new experience in mind. So today, shifting gears, we're talking about transition words. So to transition means to move from something to the next. I know you know that from being in school, right? But in writing, writers use transition words to show time and order. So you can see this little sign on the side of the page that these are different transition words. So they show what things happened in the beginning, what happened first, what happened in the middle of the story, and what happened in the end. So transition words that show the beginning of the story, first, one day, one morning, one night, the very first thing. So it shows what happens right first in the story. Middle, next, then, after, later that day, soon after. So all those words help you understand when in the story things happen. And then ending transition words are last, finally, at the end of the day, at last. And there's even more than these, but these are ones that you see more often than not. So today you're going to do something where you use these transition words in your writing so that you can show what events happen in what order. So today we're going to do something totally brand new. I know the past few days you were writing about food narratives and food memories, but today you are going to come up with a whole new idea from scratch. So what I want you to do is brainstorm and think about which of these you have a really strong memory about, and you could write a whole narrative about. You could write like a whole one-page story telling about this event, this experience in time. So these are different ideas that you could think of to give you an idea. So when you're reading through these, think of, okay, what of these like works for me? Which of these have I experienced and what would I really like to write about? And I could tell other people about with a lot of detail, and it would be really interesting for them to read. So these are different ideas. A vacation or field trip that you took. So maybe you took a family vacation someplace, or you went on a really cool field trip that you think would be cool to tell people about. A time you did something fun. So whatever is fun to you. Maybe you went for a bike ride. Maybe you went to Apex or something like that. Going someplace new. Maybe you traveled to a new state, a country, a city for the first time, and you want to tell about that. A family tradition. So maybe an example would be like my family on Christmas Eve, we always open presents on Christmas Eve, like one present on Christmas Eve. That's a family tradition, something you do the same every year. A special holiday. So a holiday that was really fun for you, maybe you had like a Halloween where it was really cool one night when you went trick-or-treating, or maybe you had like a really cool 4th of July where there were fireworks or something set off. Meeting an important person. A time you learn how to do something for the first time. So maybe the day that you learn how to ride a bike. A time you helped somebody else. A time someone helped you, or a time you faced your fear. So think about a time where you were scared to do something and maybe you did it. That'd be a really good personal narrative too. So take a couple seconds, well, not a couple seconds, like a minute. You can even pause me for now if you want, and think about which of these topics do you have a memory about that you could write a personal narrative about that would be really interesting and you remember in a lot of detail. So some of these things you might remember, but you might not be able to remember them that well and that with a lot of details, and you can describe them and almost create a picture, right? Remember those sensory details for your reader? So pick the one that you would really be able to write a lot about because you can remember it very clearly. You can use a lot of really strong details. So you can pause me right now for a couple of minutes and start to think about that before we move on to the next activity, which is going to use that memory that you picked. So this is what you're going to do once you've figured out that memory. So let's say I'm going to pick my memory is when I faced a fear. This is a really weird, funny one, actually. And I was in Zimbabwe. When I was living in Africa, I was in Zimbabwe. And I faced a fear because I don't like heights. I'm really afraid of heights. But I actually climbed up it was on a river. And I climbed up on a cliff and I jumped off of it. And I was really, really, really scared. But I jumped off of it. I actually ended up hurting myself, so don't jump off cliffs. But let's say that I tried to do that. I can remember it very clearly because it was a very memorable experience for me. So what I'm going to do is I picked that memory to brainstorm, right? I'm going to break the events of that memory down in chronological order on a list. So the very first thing I start off, I was going river rafting with friends on the Zambezi River in Zimbabwe. That would be the very first thing I write. So I'm going to write that in time order. And then the next thing I would do is we got our paddles and we started paddling down the river. So in your work, you can see this. This looks exactly the same on your work in Seesaw. When you click on this, you have this page with all the different ideas you could use. Then this page says the same thing of what you're going to do, the directions. And then on this page, this is where you're going to write down what you're going to do. So you could insert like a text box. You could record yourself, but I would do it as neatly as you can. You're going to be writing about this for a while. So I would use the text box and I would write with as much detail as I can. But sorry, I have so many windows open right now. That's yesterday's lesson. You're going to use transition words at the beginning of each sentence to show time order. So with mine and going river rafting would be first I went river rafting with my friends. I was really excited and also a little bit nervous as we walked down the hill towards the Zambezi River. Next, I jumped into the boat. I put on my life jacket and I got my oar ready and I started paddling down the river with my friends. After that, the boat guy, the guy that was with us and he was kind of guiding us down the river, he stopped our boat at a place where a cliff was jutting out along the river and told us that we had the opportunity to jump off of the big high cliff on the edge of it. Then I started laughing. So I was like, there's no way that I'm doing that. But after that, my friends got out and they were going to go jump off of the cliff. And I was like, well, if they're going to do it, then I might as well do it too, even though it was like really tall and it was really rocky and I had to climb up like a little dirt hill to get to it. Also, at that time, like when I was climbing up the hill, I was keeping my mind like in this river, there's hippopotamuses and there's crocodiles. So it's pretty sketchy. It's pretty scary. So I was kind of getting like nervous and I was sweating. So see how I'm kind of describing this with a lot of detail. I'm going to break this down even further in later lessons. But remember, I'm going in order of what happened. After I was the last one of my friends to go, so I watched each of my friends go in order. So first Jeff went, then Shamir went, then Jacqueline went, and then I was the last person up on the cliff. So the people down below me in the water were shouting at me. They were like, go, just do it. Don't be a baby, blah, blah, blah. So finally I closed my eyes. and I jumped off the cliff and I jumped into the water. But when I landed, I realized I couldn't really swim that well because I had landed funny on my legs. So when I came in, I kind of looked. I have a picture of it someplace, but I look like I'm doing a cannonball when I'm landing in the water. And I actually hit the water so hard from such a high distance that it bruised my leg really bad. Like, this is why you don't jump off cliffs. I bruised my leg really, really bad, and I could like barely walk on it after that. So I learned my lesson, and I'll probably never ever jump off a cliff again, but I will always remember it because I hurt myself pretty bad. And I was jumping off of a cliff into water that had crocodiles and hippopotamuses and God only knows what in it. So you can see throughout that, and I was just saying mine out loud, but I was using time order words so you would know exactly what happened in the order in which it happened. So you're going to do that on this page in your Seesaw activity. You can use a text box. You can record yourself. But make sure you save it because you're going to have to keep coming back to this because this is going to be your writing project for this unit. So I'm looking forward to reading about your memories, and I'll see you